This is the Osmo Action 5, a brand new action camera from DJI that I think builds upon the existing strengths of the Action 4, which I already thought was a brilliant camera for capturing motorcycle rides, and then just takes it to the next level with some really well thought out upgrades and features. So in this video, we'll go through all of the highlights with the 10 key things that you need to know about it. But before we get started, a massive thanks to DJI for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. Now naturally, you probably can't expect a warts and all in-depth review, but I've been able to use this one for the past few weeks pre-launch, and so what I can tell you is some of the best things that I found out about it so far, and also DJI have said they're happy for me to share my own views. Now like I say, it builds upon the Action 4, which I've been using predominantly to film our reviews this year, and a lot of the fundamentals are very much the same, which is massively a good thing in my book. And so here's a quick recap of what I really like about it if you're not familiar with its predecessor. One of the best things for me is how compact it is, and also the lightness of it, because obviously if you're recording your motorcycle rides, you're probably going to want to attach it to your helmet, and so the lighter the better, so that your helmet's not tipping forward and feeling heavy to move around. Then you've got a really wide field of view as standard as well. With some other cameras like GoPros, you have to fit a lens mod in order to get a really wide field of view, but these can do it as standard, and so you can get as much of the bike in shot as possible. Stabilisation is another really important feature for motorcyclists, of course, because you can take on some fairly bumpy roads, and it does mean you get footage that's really not that watchable if you don't have good stabilisation. Fortunately, both have their rock steady tech, and I always find the results to be spot on, no matter how challenging the terrain. Lastly, the other thing that DJI do so well that's been carried over from this camera is the magnetic mounting system, which means it's not only really easy to take the camera off your chin mount, for example, to take a look at the settings and then stick it back on, but also if you're running multiple mounts around the bike, it's really very simple to move it between positions to get multiple different angles, and I find that's even when you're wearing fairly thick motorcycle gloves like winter gloves, which generally don't feel that dexterous. But like I say, there are some significant updates to this Action 5, and one of the fundamentals of a good action camera is a decent image sensor. Now thankfully this new one is still the same size, so 1/1.3 inches. Of course they've wanted to maintain the same small form factor, but that image sensor is actually up there with the biggest on the market, and generally you're going to say the bigger it is, the more light it can let in, which is going to give you better image quality. This one though, well, they're calling it their next gen sensor, and they now say it can capture up to 13.5 stops of dynamic range. Now if you're not familiar with dynamic range, let me explain, because I think it's particularly important for making motorcycle videos. It's basically a measurement of the sort of range or spectrum of light that a particular camera can capture, and so with a camera with a good dynamic range, you'll see more details in the highlights or the very bright bits, as well as at the same time more detail in the dark bits or the shadows. You'll have probably seen this actually if you've seen footage of an old phone or old action camera on YouTube, where the brighter parts of the image are really blown out and you can't really see any detail, and equally in some parts they'll look so dark that they're pretty much entirely black. Thing is, if you've got a controlled environment like a studio or something like that, then of course you can play with the lighting to make sure you've got the optimal settings and potentially optimize them for the dynamic range of your particular camera, but that's almost never the case when you're out on the motorcycle. In the same shot, you might get extremely bright skies up above, but if you've got a little bit of tree cover or, you know, a particularly shady spot on the road, well then that part of the image can be really quite dark, and so something with a nice wide dynamic range is going to be a real asset, and I'm sure that you can see in some of this footage that I'm showing you now, this Action 5 does it extremely well. Now on top of that, one of the other rudiments of the camera is the chip or the processor, and this one gets a new upgraded 4nm chip. Now that might sound like a techie spec that's a bit abstract, but here's what it lets you do. Battery life is now a really impressive 240 minutes or 4 hours, and so that's up 50% on the 160 minutes of the Action 4, which was already plenty enough for most of my rides. Now granted, battery capacity is now now up by about 10%, but a lot of that extension in battery life has actually been achieved with the new chip, which is much more efficient. Now, like I say, I've found the Action 4 generally, for myself anyway, to be enough in terms of battery life, because I like to be quite specific and precise with the shots that I'm getting. But there are occasional days where I have forgotten to charge the batteries or the camera the night before, and so having more in reserve is always going to be a good thing, especially considering that they've managed to keep it pretty much the same size and weight. And on top of that, there are different use cases. If you're doing long tours, for example, where you might not have the option to charge it up very often, or if you want to leave it running for the entirety of a fairly long commute, for example, where you want it for insurance or safety purposes, then again, this huge battery life is definitely going to be an asset. Now, the other side of this chip is that it allows for more advanced processing in the camera, and that opens up some new creative options like subject centering and tracking. Now, to be fair, I don't expect this to be a great deal of use for that sort of chin or chest shot where you want the road to be fixed in the center of the shot. But if you mount it on the bars for that sort of selfie view, then having yourself moving around the bike, especially if you're riding in a more sporty manner, might be quite an interesting look. Also, I have found if you just have it static and you're walking around the bike, for example, and doing some off-the-bike stuff, then it really is very smooth to follow you and almost looks like you've got a camera operator, which I really like a lot. Now, admittedly, I've just stuck it on the saddle here, but still, I think this is quite impressive. I love how it follows you around, and I'm certain that I'm going to try and use this in some of my reviews and stuff. Now, another area with big updates is with the screens, both on the front and back, with a whole bunch of updates that I think make it a fair bit more pleasant to use. Now, they're both still touch screens, so it's nice to be able to tap the front screen as well as the rear. But on this version, they're now OLEDs or OLEDs, and so you've got a much crisper image, especially on the back when you're reviewing your footage, that just looks a lot more vibrant as well. On top of that though, they've managed to narrow the bezel on both the rear and the front, and so actually again, for the same size of physical camera, you got quite a bit more screen space, and so again that makes it easier to review your footage, but also it helps with navigating through the menus and things like that. That's particularly handy when you're trying to do it at the side of the road. You want something that's quick and easy to use, and also it's an always-on display, so you can still see the recording time and some of the recording specs on the front screen there, but without the main video shot making it super bright, so you'll get less interference from light from the screen, particularly when you're shooting in low light scenarios. It's just a nice little well thought out feature. Now, I think sound quality is an underrated part of making a good motorcycle video, and that's one of the things I really liked about the previous generation as well, was the fact that you could pair it with their wireless mics. They call this their Osmo audio connectivity ecosystem, and the key thing here is that you get pro level audio as opposed to just using the built-in mics or something like a pair of Bluetooth earphones. In fact, I quite often stick one of these in my pocket to connect to the camera that's on my bars, and that's going to give you a lot better sound from the bike and the exhaust note than the built-in mics, which to be fair are decent quality, but you're just never going to get great audio when it's up here in the wind. This updated Action 5 though takes it one step further, because you can now actually pair two of the wireless mic transmitters without needing any separate receiver. Again, this just opens up more creative options, because you could do stuff like record yourself and a friend having a conversation while you're out on the bikes, or perhaps even put one in your helmet and one in your pocket, and then you can blend the two sounds and get the right mix after the ride when you got all your footage in the edit. Then you've also got some nice little practical things built into this camera, some extra features like the fact that it's now got internal storage. So there's 47 gigs that can be used without even having to put in an external memory card. Now, on the one hand, it's nice not to have to buy a card to use the camera, and you could consider that a tiny cost saved. But also, it's very easy just to forget your cards, especially if you're downloading footage a lot or formatting the cards. And so again, much like the battery life, this is just another safety net when you're out trying to shoot something. And I also think a good action camera for motorcycling has to be really quite resilient and tough. And so it's great news that this one gets improved waterproofing without the need for a separate case. This one's now good for up to 20 meters, so double that of the previous generation and double that of some of the competition. Again, just another peace of mind, which is great to have. But look, the all-important piece of context for any new product is the price, and there's no point in adding all of these amazing new features if you jack up the price massively. Now, there are loads of different packages for action cameras that bundle in all sorts of accessories and mounts, but if you use the base package for all of the major competitors as a bit of a benchmark, then it really does come up looking pretty good. This one comes in at £329, and that's the exact same as Insta360's flagship Ace Pro, but also significantly less than the new GoPro 13. That one comes in at £399, and so while we have got a bit of a comparison coming up of the two cameras with a lot more detail, you know, that is a big advantage for the Action 5 straight off the bat. So look, do hit subscribe if you want to see that comparison as soon as it goes live. And also, I'll put the video for the Action 4 on the screen now, in case you want some of the basic features of this camera, but just at that lower price point. Do let me know if you've got any questions down in the comments below, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.